All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Corner Blue. I'm Andres Rico. I'm here with Hugo Alvarado, and we're here to break down the match of the summer for La Selecta, the new Selecta so far. Hugo, how you doing?
Doing great. Can't complain. La Selecta won. Italy won. La Selecta won. So can't complain when La Selecta wins, especially when we beat Guatemala. I mean, it seems like we're always, having that 0-0, that 1-0, but last night, 2-0. So, hey, can't complain.
Finally, the stalemate has been broken, ladies and gentlemen. A fixture that tends to be bland, or at least it just doesn't lead anywhere. It's either a 1-1, 0-0, and they always are friendlies in LA for the most part. Granted, this was something special. Gold Cup, Guatemala called on last minute because Curaçao, I guess, got the boot due to some COVID outbreak within their delegation. And things worked out for the best. I kind of felt bad for the coaching staff that had been prepping for Curaçao because, let's face it, Curaçao has a whole bunch of players that play in the Netherlands, strong ties to the Netherlands. They play like the Netherlands, and they're an up-and-coming team. It seems that they finally looked to their diaspora to find players, and with a coach like Kluivert coming back after a first stint a few years ago, which he coincided with Hugo Perez and El Sarco a few years ago, it was a matchup that would have been exciting due to Curaçao being on the come-up. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition. Guatemala got that last-minute call, hey, can you guys get a team together and hop on over? It worked out, and even better, Roldan had that opportunity to face off against Guatemala. There was a little, morbo going into it, some bad blood that it seemed that was trying to get hyped on social media. I wasn't buying into it that much. I actually don't think it wasn't that big of a deal. But yes, Alex Roldan, of all people, comes in, scores in his debut. We're going to break it down right now. So, Hugo, where'd you watch the match? How was your weekend? I know you watched the Euro. Did you watch Copa America? Like, this was a great weekend to just hang out either with friends, family, and catch all these exciting matches, right?
Yeah, I was lucky enough with the busy life that I have to watch parts of the warm-up games because, let's admit, Copa America final, Euro Cup final was just warm up for the big match, El Salvador against Guatemala. So
the premier match. The premier
match. I mean, the other ones were good. I mean, good games. You have Brazil, Argentina, England, Italy. I mean, it's always great to watch those games before you get to see the real deal. La Selecta play in the Gold Cup. So, honestly, that's what matters to me. So,
no, for sure.
Yes, no, I got to watch I actually missed the Copa America final because I was fishing with my son.
Okay,
so but I was following the game on my phone as much as I could. And then I did get to watch most of the Euro Cup final. And yeah, I mean, exciting matches always. But I mean, let's admit it. I was kind of joking earlier, but the reality is that, the game that really, had me going and excited and looking forward to was that match of El Salvador against Guatemala. We had to wait an extra day for the debut. And I was, ready to see what La Selecta had to offer in a official match where we're playing for points. And yeah, it was good. I mean, we can talk a little bit more in detail about the match, but it was exciting. I actually worked out for me that it was late at night.
It was ideal, a later match in the day. And I feel like this time of the year with the Gold Cup or friendly matches, as a Salvadoran fan abroad, it is interesting to get hyped up on these types of matches, especially on a weekend like this, where yes, you have the higher profile finals from these tournaments, right? And I'm on group chat with, friends from all over the place. And yeah, when it measures internationally in terms of, the expectation and whatnot, obviously a Copa America and a Euro finals are going to draw a lot of attention, a lot of neutrals. And, it's normal, I guess, for people to be, look down a little bit on a match, let's say like El Salvador Guate. But this is what this podcast is for, because this is for all of us that get pumped up for that match. Because yes, like you, I was waiting for 8 p.m. We were texting right before the match because Hugo hit me up. He's like, wait, is this match starting at 7:30 or 8? Are we gonna have to watch this game delayed? And it wouldn't have been surprising for me, because it's happened throughout the years that I've been trying to watch matches for La Selecta on Univision or whatever channel in the US. We were nervous, ladies and gentlemen. I bet you were too, about the time discrepancy, where we're going to have to shut off all social media so that we could watch the half-hour delay. Fortunately, it all worked out. We missed out on the national anthems, which was kind of a bummer, very anticlimactic. But one thing that was refreshing was Cienfuegos on the broadcast, along with Jose Hernandez, like one of the greats, giving you that player's mindset, giving you that inside information, sharing anecdotes. And then you had Jose Hernandez, that is, an OG of the international Salvadoran broadcasters. So it was nice to know that they weren't just feeding the commentators these stats, to make them try and win over the Salvadoran audience in that respect. There wasn't any pandering. It wasn't condescending. These people knew what they were talking about. And it was cool to get Enrique Borja's input as well. But one thing that stood out hearing Don Mauricio Cienfuegos is just how polite and humble the guy is. When you hear other broadcasts with players or former players from other countries, you've never heard, I at least hadn't heard them say Don when referring to an elder, or an elder player. And in this case, it was Enrique Borja. And that was kind of cool, because it was kind of like hearing my uncle talking about soccer on a broadcast. It felt very, very Salvadoran to hear that humility of a personality, a player of that stature in the broadcast. So that was something refreshing. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I enjoy listening to Cienfuegos. I mean, one of my idols growing up, I started watching MLS since day one, and I wouldn't miss a game at the Rose Bowl. And my dad and I will go, my brother, my dad and I will go to the trainings. We would just go because the trainings were open at the fields outside of the Rose Bowl. So it was always nice to see Cienfuegos, and now see him as a commentator. It's always great. I know he owns a restaurant. I think he still does in Pasadena. So I'm
hashtag not a sponsor yet, but we will. Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, it's a barbecue joint. I don't remember the name right now, but yeah, it's always nice to have people like him. People who really know our country, who know how we think. Who played those games against Guatemala, who knows that, we may think, oh, yeah, it's Guatemala, but those games are very difficult, for many reasons. We're very similar in many ways, and that just makes, games turn very physical sometimes, and that's what we end up with a draw, or, one of the teams winning by one. And they showed numbers, and historically Guatemala has beat us more times than us. So I was kind of surprised to see that, and glad to see that we scored 2 goals. That I'm not saying that we're surprised, that I'm surprised that we scored 2 goals. We created opportunities to win by more, but given the history that games always end by one team winning by one, it was just nice, to see that last goal by Rivas. That was kind of like the cherry on the cake.
Definitely. So we're going to break down some of the stats. I just brought them up on my screen. And you mentioned that in the past, due to just the similarities in style, biotype, you name it, it tends to end in a stalemate. I think it's a different match when you see El Salvador play Honduras because there's more of that history when it comes to that match. I feel like the players are a little extra motivated. I think when you get into Salvador, Guatemala, I could understand if the players are like for a friendly match, right? Oh, here we are playing Guatemala again. So, you don't see that same level of motivation in a friendly match. But this was completely different. I think they hadn't faced each other in an official match like this since a Gold Cup in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, which Guatemala won 1-0. And I think if I remember correctly, that match, Lisa Naya got red carded really early in the match, and that just kind of conditioned the game. But with this match, ladies and gentlemen, it was something similar to what we've seen. Possession, La Selecta won it 69% to 31%. The accuracy on the passes, is something that we've seen, for the last few campaigns. That's something that El Salvador has developed and is consistent with. But Hugo, could you break down some of the differences between, let's say, some of the performances we'd seen under Los Cobos with what we saw last night? That, the tale of the story, the stats looks like similar to what was happening under the Los Cobos. But you look at the scoreline, you look at fans' reaction to the style, and it's very different.
One thing I want to highlight, and that I'm looking forward to for the upcoming matches against Trinidad and against Mexico. So one thing that has been consistent with this team is that we play the same style no matter who's in front of us. And I think that's I'm highlighting that because even though it might be Guatemala, there's the psychological factor for the players knowing that they're playing a team that may be perceived as being too similar to us, or perhaps there's not an extra motivation to play against them. We've seen our team do best when we play against bigger teams, Mexico or USA, or at least have those first 30 minutes or 45 minutes where we're like, oh, we really have a shot of beating them, and then we
the mental mistakes and fatigue hits. Yeah,
right. But what I saw was a team that, yes, had a lot of possession, and we're used to that. But it is a team that puts a lot of bodies up in the opponent side of the field. And yes, it's going to take time for us to be able to kind of make that jump in the last 3/4 of the field. Hugo has been working for 2.5 months with the team, so we can't, expect miracles to happen in that period of time. But what the reason I'm highlighting this is because psychologically, one of the things that he's trying to do is to have the players have the same level of motivation, the same intensity, the same tempo, the same style of play, no matter who's in front of you. And I think that we saw that last night, although it took us 80 plus minutes to kind of break Guatemala's defense. It was a very tightly closed team in the back. It took us a while, but the team didn't get desperate. That's another thing. The team continues to try and play what we are trying to play, regardless of the score, regardless of the circumstances. I didn't see the team try to, where they lose concentration and maybe they do a stupid foul here and there, or something. So I think those are some of the points to highlight, that the team played in the same way from the beginning to the end, even though it was like the 80 something minute and we were still 0-0 and we had created opportunities. Josh Perez, gave two very nice assists, one to Portillo that could have ended in a goal, another one to Monterrosa that should have ended in a goal, or at least a better shot at goal. And we couldn't, score. But the team continued to do their thing. Even when we were up 1-0, I didn't really see the team say, all right, let's just have the ball. Let's just
like
defend.
England did.
Like England did. There was a huge mistake by England. They were trying to protect that 1-0, and then you saw what happened. So shout out to the team, to Hugo Perez and his staff, and to the work that they're doing, because I saw that. I personally saw that we were up 1-0. There were 7+ minutes left, and the team continued to play offensive football, trying to find that other goal. And yes, we got lucky towards the end when the goalkeeper saved the shot that was right in front of him, and then I think Zabaleta was there to clear it, and then we scored the second goal. So to me, it's like we continue seeing that level of game where there's possession, where there's movements, and yes, there's a lot to improve in the final phase, in the final quarter of the field, to try to create more opportunities. But the team continues to play, to stay focused, and continue sticking to that idea or style that Hugo Perez has been working with.
Yeah, I think another aspect is the dynamic or the dynamism that exists. We've mentioned it here before, where Hugo Perez and his staff make certain adjustments during the match that end up working out or pinning out. Right now is still the time to try out certain pieces. Granted, we got the qualifiers coming up in September, but these are his last guaranteed 2 matches that he has with the team. And with the last one, you saw how he tweaked his starting 11 around. He put Jairo as a 9, tried him out as a 9 to see if that would work. He was too disconnected, I feel. He's not, it just didn't pan out, where he wasn't that reference, that target in the box to receive and play off of and create chances. It was just very disjointed. You saw him trying to kind of stay back a little bit as like a false 9, but there wasn't really anyone for him to play off of. It's just too disjointed. And it was very refreshing to see that instead of punishing Jairo for not gelling or not having a great performance as a 9, you saw Hugo shift him towards the left and keep him in the game. And once you saw him on that wing, he was taking people on 1, 2, 3 players. Sometimes he was a little too gung-ho, but you saw that spark. You saw that connection that he was having with the other players. And that, I thought, was a very positive thing to see, of instead of punishing a player, letting him play in a more natural position, and it ended working out. Like you said, they need to improve on the last third of the pitch. That's something that they were saying on the broadcast as well, and it was very evident. So on the stats, it says we had 21 shots on target. Of those 21, only 6 were on target. There were too many shots that were too soft, too ambitious from outside the box, that, yes, they finished the play, but it was like, come on now, you need to get closer. You need to create that danger within the box. So I think if anything you could ask from this team is just being more precise, being a little more cold-blooded in that last third. Because granted, Guatemala, in a sense, parked the bus, let us have the ball, But you got to take advantage of those situations. Like you said, they didn't lose their cool. There wasn't a moment where you saw players arguing with themselves or chastising each other. It seemed that they worked together as a cohesive unit, especially with the subs that occurred. So I think, yeah, this match was definitely something in a positive direction. There's room to improve. I still am of the opinion that we need a 9, and I think for now the closest option we have, considering that Bonilla is out, Fito is not game fit, and that just kind of starts a whole polemic on its own. He's a polemical figure, but I think if you have someone like Rivera, that might help in certain situations, depending on, the strategy that they have for that match or at that moment. So I walk away from it. It was exciting. I'm glad they finally broke through, like you said, minute 80, 81. And Roldan, of all people, scored. It was a kind of a jumbled play where Marvin Marquez tried going for the ball top of the box. The defender clears it poorly, but Marvin presses and the ball ends up rolling perfectly served to Roldan, and he just hits it straight through with the laces, and it went in. And it must
That's
have been
technique right there. that bullet is technique. I mean, it's I just want to point that out, because it wasn't like, let me stop this ball and let me find a good way, a good opportunity to. It was like he got that ball. It was bouncing a little bit, which was perfect, but it was perfect technique the way he hit that ball, and it went right into the bottom left corner of the goalkeeper. So of all players, Roldan, and I'm happy for him. It's well, I mean, what a way to make your debut in the national team in the biggest tournament in the area. So I'm glad he scored. Should give him confidence for the rest of the cup.
And it was interesting too, because what I was curious to see what would happen is if Hugo Perez would drop the Macas out of the starting 11 and insert Roldan. That wasn't the case. Roldan started off of the bench and was inserted into the mid. And that actually seemed to work. The team got a little more jointed. There was more connection, more direct, especially having an option on the right with Roldan. And then you have Jairo Enriquez being a headache on the left flank. There's that versatility that wasn't there before Roldan was inserted. And then leaving Tamacas in, I think, is a good idea too. Like, our fullbacks have earned their spot. I think depending on the situation, we'll see what justification could be used for starting Roldan over Tamacas. But Roldan definitely said, hey, I'm here to play. And a player of his stature, the level that he's at, his streak of great performances with the Sounders, you have to include a guy like that. You have to find somewhere for him, even if it's keeper.
He's an option as a goalkeeper as well. But one thing I want to add to that, Andres, is I don't know if this applies much to our audience, which are the la diaspora. But I've seen, some journalists, some fans out of El Salvador, saying that Hugo Perez is prioritizing the foreign-born players, the American-born players. And yes, I must admit that there has been more of an open door for those players, and we're seeing it with the amount of players that we currently have in the roster. But if you look at the starting 11, there were 2 players born outside of El Salvador last night. It was Josh Perez and Eric Zabaleta. The rest were all local players. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because we're seeing that, yes, coaches are always going to have certain players that they see something that we don't see. It doesn't necessarily mean that a certain player is being lined up because whatever reason people want to find, because they play in the US or because they're
Before
related or
before it
whatever.
was whoever supposedly was friends with Goches was on the squad. That was the excuse before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Goches was being blamed for making the rosters and the call-ups. He was the guy calling the players because that was his job, to call the players who the whole coaching staff selected. So it seems like some people always want to find something to say. But the reason I'm saying this is because out of 11 players, 2 were born outside of El Salvador. Tamacas has been doing great, and Hugo Perez respected the fact that he's been doing great despite having there an Alex Roldan, who's having probably the best start of his career in MLS. And yes, I agree that that in a way, we should find a spot for Roldan. But this tells you that Hugo's sending a clear message. If you're doing well and you're performing, I don't care where you play and I don't care where you were born. I'm going to play you because of what you're doing day to day on the pitch, in trainings, and I like seeing that. And then you have the subs, and if you go in as a sub and then you show that that you can make a difference, perhaps in the next game you're going to have your opportunity. But I'm seeing that that he's giving players the opportunity that they deserve. And yes, the goals came from the players who the legionarios who are coming from the United States, and the assists as well. So that tells you something, but at the same time, it's important to point out that I don't think Hugo Perez, is, being influenced so much by where the players come from. Of course, any national team in the world, when you bring a player from the outside, that player is going to have some type of priority because they compete at a higher level. But Tamacas has been working hard and doing really well, and he showed it again last night. He was probably one of the best players in the first half, and I was happy to see that. So I just thought it was important to point that out, that we started with 2 players who are not who are born outside of El Salvador. And then, of course, more came in the second half. But I like to see the competition that is being created. And I like to see that Hugo Perez is having a very good problem, which is, who do I play? I have these 2 players or 3 players who can play, who can start in my team, but he has to make a decision. And then at the end of the day, it comes down to fine details and whatever the coach feels will serve him best for what he's trying to do on the field.
I think if there's any example of Bettis not just buying into the idea that if you're playing USL or MLS, you're automatically a starter, is a Jairo Enriquez case right here. Because he's coming from a season where his team did not do well at all. He has a certain pedigree, yes, but at a national team level, he had been forgotten. He's been forgotten for years. And for him to bring him to one of the microciclos, as he's invited several players, local, domestic players, because that's what these camps are for, that he was able to identify the potential and being able to fine tune so we can see this like renaissance of Jairo. That's an example of what this guy is doing. I think when it comes to clickbaiting, punditry, trying to, sound a little louder than everyone else, there's going to be a lot of people that like to put these polemical statements out there, but I don't buy into it. It's very superficial. It's corny. It's cliche. And unfortunately, it just falls into the cyclical, hating that goes on no matter what. And it falls into the coin phrase that I've heard even in my family and from other Salvadoreños that I've bumped into throughout my life. No hay peor enemigo de un salvadoreño que otro salvadoreño. And you're seeing it now where people, so it's like they just want to llevar la contraria. It just seems that there's people that are unhappy no matter what. But I think the main thing is seeing these pieces being fine-tuned and knowing the origins of each piece before you start running your yap or typing bullshit on your phone. And it is exciting to see that domestic players, as well as foreign born and based players, are getting their shot. And it seems that he's finding the right mix of them. They're gelling in a way that no choca, because we've seen in other generations where players might have been reluctant to come, they come, and you see that stark contrast. Like I'm remembering Arturo when he first played for the Los Colos, how he had his style, his speed, his IQ, his way of seeing the game, and it did not gel to perfection with the other players, and it was a little disjointed. And I think that's kind of what affected them being able to make it to 2010. Obviously, there's stuff in the background too there, but what I'm seeing here is this insertion of guys, and you'd think they've been playing with each other for a while. That is something that is new for me, at least, to see that these pieces are gelling. And you can only get excited to see that, knowing that this guy, Hugo Perez, has only been coaching, like you mentioned, a couple months. We all know that. And we have a huge competition coming up, which is Octavo Nine. Everyone saw Trinidad, or I hope, everyone watched the Trinidad Mexico game. I still don't understand how it wasn't Trinidad and Tobago that faced us rather than St. Kitts, because they played a great game against pretty much the A team from Mexico and got a result. So fortunately, we're in the octagonal. Things played out the way they did, but I think playing Trinidad will be a great test to see what do we do with teams that might be faster, might be stronger, might be better in the air, because those are always the obstacles that La Selecta runs into when playing the Caribbean teams, and especially the higher tier ones like Jamaica, Trinidad, and Haiti on a good day, because Haiti tends to be pretty unstable and up and down for various reasons. But I think this next match against Trinidad will be a good test to this will be like a good sparring. This is where you're going to see La Selecta take its blows. You're going to see its deficiencies exposed, and we'll see what they're able to do. Because typically that's what happens with these types of matches. And the ideal would be is we walk away with, the 3 points and head into Sunday to face Mexico, and we're already into the next round. That would be the ideal. But I think the most exciting match of the Hugo Perez era, with not that much on the line, but the most exciting one, I think will be this Wednesday.
Yeah, and I feel pretty confident that the team is going to get the 3 points. Every game is different. Nobody thought that Trinidad would get a point, from that Mexico match. And that just tells you that you can't really assume that, because, and I've said it, I think I've said it here, that this Trinidad and Tobago is probably not the best version of Trinidad and Tobago that we've seen in the last 10 years. But still, you can't go into a game with the mentality thinking that, we're gonna, we're gonna beat this team. They're not doing well right now. They're gonna come full of confidence to this game after getting that point from Mexico. But I still think that the game that we're trying to implement will actually be very successful against those teams. And we've reinforced our back line. Our Tamacas is a pretty decent sized guy. We have Eric and and Ronald, who are not small. Of course, they're not 6'4" and 6'5" like some of the players that Trinidad may have. But I feel pretty confident. I'm feeling that confidence that comes from seeing how the team is trying to play, where things are not just happening because we just had a lucky game or a lucky night. Things are happening because the team has worked for that. The team has worked towards that. And of course, there's no guarantees, but I feel confident that it's going to be a great match because it is, like you said, probably the most important match in the Hugo Perez era, because if we win, we're through. And then, we can go and play Mexico and have fun.
Yeah, try more pieces out.
Yeah,
that'll
try
be
more
the
pieces, have fun,
and
then at least not have that pressure that we have to win or get a good result in order to go through. So, I feel pretty good going into Wednesday's match, and it will be interesting to see if Hugo Perez makes any modifications to his lineup based on what he learned and what he saw yesterday. And we've seen that he's not a coach that makes subs just to make subs, it's like not man per man. I mean, we saw that even yesterday, he was about to sub Josh, and the sub was ready to go, and he saw something different and he modified the sub. I mean, Josh still went out like 5 minutes later or something like that, but he made a modification on the spot based on something that was happening at that moment in the game. And that is, a clear example of the way the coaching staff is working. They hire a new person, a new coach, or a new staff to watch the games from a different view of the stadium, so he can have a different perspective and be in real time communication with the bench to exchange ideas and see what deficiencies they're seeing, or perhaps if the other team is showing a deficiency in a certain part of the field, and we can put a fresh player in there, or a player with a different characteristic in there. So there are many things that are happening right now with the national team that are positive in many different areas. But I would be curious to see. I mean, you have on the bench, you have Joaquin Rivas, who's having a really good moment with Tulsa. Tulsa, right? And then you have an Armando Moreno, who we have yet to see. Roldan, who came in as a sub. So I mean, there's this important pieces on the bench. I don't think he's gonna play with Jairo again as a false 9. I think that was
I think it's
clear.
Pretty clear. Yeah, where he best fits, either on either flank.
Yeah, I think the probably one player who perhaps his level has maybe dropped a little bit. I mean, I really don't like to go into these details of mentioning names, but I think Portillo didn't seem like we didn't see his best version last night compared to the Portillo that we were seeing under the Los Cobos, where he was one of our top players up there, scoring goals,
main targets up on top.
Yeah, so perhaps that could be a position that I'm not suggesting, but based on what we saw, where Perez might try something different. But I think the back line stays the same. I don't think that's going to change.
Was Rodriguez injured though? Because I remember him going down, and I don't know. I think because of his height.
Playing.
Okay.
Because he just landed on his arm, I think so. But he was able to
Because it
to
would be
continue.
interesting if he throws in Cibrian, since he's a little taller.
Yeah,
But he doesn't have that much experience on the national team, and he still would need to get to know Zabaleta better. So I think if
yeah, yeah.
Rodriguez
Cibrian, we
isn't
saw
it,
him one game. I think we haven't seen him play under Perez yet,
no, not under Perez.
but
He
the
played
one game
the last game that Los Cobos coached at El Cusca.
he looked pretty solid. I really like what I saw from Cibrian. So hey, that's another piece, another good piece that we have there. So yeah, it should be an exciting match, and I'm hoping that we can get the 3 points.
All right, and we're going to wrap this one up. We wanted to do a nice quick episode considering that we're going to try and break down each match as we go along. Want to shout out everybody on Twitter that interacted, liked, shared, like RB, Mario, El Pájaro as well, interacting, Rudy, VIP dog grooming, hashtag not a sponsor, but they gave us a like, so it's all good.
Shout out to William. I know him. He's actually the VIP dog.
Nice.
Grooming.
Hashtag not a sponsor yet, William, but you know how to contact us. Then we have Bryant Nags, Nags, Eric Madrid, Pupusa Mecanica checking in, FJA Academy, shout out to them. I know you guys are watching the match with, the tripas en corazon, not knowing who to exactly cheer for with the whole Guate El Salvador situation. Byron, Mauricio Peñate, Shaston, Lucas Ramirez. I'm just reading the whole list because I appreciate all of y'all. Let's see. At Sonic1319, El Fantasmita also, Carlitos, NEUFC with those nice tees, always interacting with us. Shout out to them. Hashtag not a sponsor yet. Mauri Melar, Eric Rosales, Eli Molina, Jaime R., Frank Ortiz, then I think it's like a paleta. That's their tag. Anyway, Rigo Giron, Eric, Brandon Flores, Emilio Martinez, mi tocayo El Andrés, Jaime Ventura, Raúl Hernández, El José Guti 010, Antonio Soto, Sol Rosa Daisy, and Kelv 16, and last but not least, El Dragón. So yeah, shout out to all our listeners. Thanks for interacting with us. It's always fun knowing that there's plenty of us out there. Yes, here I am watching the game at my suegra's house, and she's like, El Salvador, Guatemala, ¿para qué están viendo eso? Granted, she's Guatemalan, so she, so I'm like, hey, lady, it's your country versus mine. Like, let's enjoy this. We're a family now. And she's like, ¿para qué están viendo este fútbol? Blah, blah. The typical stuff that happens when people hate on your own soccer. But it was at that moment that I was like, hashtag this kid chose me. And it's true, right?
It was at this moment that Andres' marriage ended.
No, definitely not that. But I mean, I've gotten that same attitude from my own family. Even in El Salvador, I'm like, hey, hay que poner el partido. Ay, ¿para qué quieres ver eso? Blah, blah. Anyway, there's non-believers, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a show for all of you believers. This is a show for all of you that sweat and bleed the blue colors of our national team. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, remember that the match against Trinidad is on Wednesday at, let's see, what time is it at? I think it's at 4:30. 4:30
Pacific time.
4:30 Pacific
Eastern time.
And it's going to be on Fox Sports 1 if you're in the US, if you want the English broadcast, or you can tune in and hopefully you'll have Don Cienfuegos, Don Mauricio Cienfuegos on TUDN. And yeah, it should be a pretty exciting match. I think the closest that we'll get to the qualifiers, the demand, la exigencia that the qualifiers have without, something huge on the line. And hopefully we don't have any injuries and we have a great result. So we'll be back breaking that match down. Hopefully have this episode out by Thursday, Friday. That way it doesn't get too repetitive. And then we'll meet back and collect ourselves after Sunday, hopefully with La Selecta into the next round. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, good night. Enjoy wearing that blue kit. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy DVRing, watching the match whenever you can, because yes, it is every 2 years. But still, there's nothing like it. 3 matches in like a week. It's the best. So enjoy the Copa Oro. Hopefully we don't get Marufo along the way. Fortunately, we didn't have to mention him until now because he did a pretty solid job. So have a great night. We'll see you.